Leo adjusted the worn collar of his shirt, the fabric thin and soft from 1,000 washings. The air in the theater was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the low, confident murmur of wealth. He sat in his assigned seat row 15, sandwiched between the world he knew and the world he could only glimpse from a distance. This was the Madison Theater's annual charity performance where the elite of the city gathered to watch performances they'd forget by morning and donate sums they'd never miss. For most nights of the year, Leo was invisible in this world. He was the man who fixed the temperamental HVAC system, who repaired the delicate lighting rigs, who made sure the sound carried to every plush seat without a hint of feedback. Tonight, however, he was not invisible. He was a patron. A single ticket had cost him 3 days' wages, but Maya's music teacher had insisted she needed to hear a proper orchestra at least once. "Daddy, will we sit in the front?" Maya had asked that morning, her small fingers sticky with syrup as she ate her pancakes. Leo had smiled, his heart constricting with that familiar mix of fierce love and quiet sorrow. "Not this time, sweetheart, but the sound is actually better where we'll be sitting." He glanced at his watch. A reliable Timex, scratched but accurate. Maya was with her aunt tonight. He'd promised to tell her every detail of the performance. The seat beside him remained empty as the theater filled. Perhaps a no-show, a small mercy that would give him space to breathe. But just as the lights began to dim, a figure slipped into the adjacent seat. She arrived in a whisper of expensive fabric and subtle floral perfume. Even in the fading light, she was unmistakable. Isabella Vance. Her face graced magazine covers and financial news segments. Vance Technologies was reshaping the tech landscape, and she was its architect and empress. Leo shifted slightly, making himself smaller. Their arms nearly touched on the shared armrest, his worn cotton sleeve against what he guessed was silk or cashmere. He pulled his arm away instinctively. The orchestra began with Debussy notes floating through the air like mist over water. Leo leaned forward imperceptibly, his entire focus narrowing to the music. He forgot about the woman beside him, forgot about the discomfort of his secondhand suit jacket, forgot everything except the intricate dance of melody and harmony. Isabella Vance was bored. These charity events were obligations boxes to be checked. Her assistant had scheduled this one months ago. Support for the arts, excellent optics, important networking opportunity. Yet the emails demanding her attention continued to accumulate on her phone. The markets never slept, especially not for Debussy. She was about to discreetly check her messages when something caught her attention. The man beside her was experiencing the music. Not enduring it, not using it as background for mental calculations or networking strategies. His eyes were closed, his breathing aligned with the musical phrases, his fingers moving almost imperceptibly, as though conducting from memory. For reasons she couldn't articulate, she found herself watching him instead of the stage. There was something compelling about such unguarded appreciation. When the movement reached its climax, she noticed a slight sheen in his eyes, quickly blinked away. The piece ended. Applause rippled through the theater, polite and measured. The man beside her applauded with genuine enthusiasm, then seemed to catch himself glancing around self-consciously and moderating his response. Isabella found herself speaking before she'd planned to. "Beautiful, wasn't it?" Leo turned, surprised to be addressed. "Yes, ma'am." The phrasing in the second movement was... He stopped himself, suddenly aware he was about to ramble about musical theory to someone who likely had season tickets to every orchestra in the city. She tilted her head slightly. "Was what?" He hesitated. "Different than I expected. More urgent. You've heard this performed before." "Only recordings." He shifted in his seat, conscious of his worn cuffs. "Old vinyl, mostly." Isabella was about to respond when the conductor returned to the stage. The lights dimmed again, and they both turned their attention forward. The second piece was Tchaikovsky, bold and dramatic. Despite his determination to maintain a low profile, Leo couldn't help but be transported. Each surge of strings sent a current through him. Each brass flourish made his pulse quicken. This was why he'd saved for months, to feel music in his bones instead of through tinny speakers. At intermission, the house lights rose gradually. Leo blinked, returning to himself. He needed airspace away from the crush of effluence that surrounded him. As he rose to leave, his program slipped from his lap. Both he and Isabella reached for it simultaneously. Their hands brushed. Leo pulled back immediately, but not before Isabella noticed the calluses on his fingers, the small burn mark on his thumb, hands that worked with tools and electricity, not keyboards and touchscreens. "Excuse me," he murmured, retrieving the program himself. "You're familiar with Bernstein?" she asked, noticing his program was open to notes about the final piece. Leo hesitated. "I try to be. Music was important in our household growing up." "Are you a musician?" A smile flickered across his face, gentle self-deprecation in his eyes. "No, ma'am, just a listener." "Isabella," she corrected. "And there's no just about being a listener. Most people here are merely hearers, if that." Leo looked at her more directly, then surprise evident in his expression. "Isabella, then." "Thank you." The second bell rang, signaling the end of intermission. Leo settled back into his seat, aware that something had shifted. The conversation had been brief, but the woman beside him, Isabella, no longer seemed quite so untouchably distant. The third piece began Bernstein's symphonic dances. Leo was once again lost in the music when a sharp electronic tone cut through the performance. Several patrons turned with annoyed expressions. Isabella fumbled with her clutch, extracting a slim phone that was displaying an urgent message. Her features tightened as she read, the color draining from her face. She rose abruptly and slipped past Leo, whispering a terse, "Excuse me," as she left. Leo watched her go, then returned his attention to the stage. The moment of connection had passed, predictably ephemeral. 10 minutes later, raised voices in the lobby penetrated even the theater's heavy doors. The music continued, but now several people were looking back toward the entrance. Leo felt a tug of concern. Something was wrong. During a momentary pianissimo in the music, he heard it clearly. A woman's voice. Isabella's voice, tight with controlled panic. "There must be someone who can help." Leo hesitated. It wasn't his business. He was here as a patron, not staff. The night maintenance crew would handle whatever technical issue had arisen. But the music was already broken for him. With a sigh, he rose and made his way to the back of the theater, slipping out the door. In the opulent lobby, a small crowd had gathered. At its center stood Isabella, her composed facade cracking as she spoke urgently into her phone. "What do you mean system failure? That's not an explanation, that's a description." She ran a hand through her perfectly styled hair, displacing it slightly. "The backup should have engaged automatically. That's literally why we have redundancies." Leo approached cautiously. "Excuse me, is there a problem I might help with?" Isabella turned to recognition flickering in her eyes. "Unless you're secretly an electrical engineer specializing in audio-visual systems integration, I doubt it." Leo's expression didn't change. "Actually, I'm the theater's lead maintenance technician. I designed the integration for the new system last year." Isabella stared at him, reassessing. The theater manager, a nervous man named Powell who'd been hovering nearby, stepped forward. "Leo, thank God. The streaming system for the charity broadcast has crashed. We're dark to all the satellite locations." Leo's brow furrowed. "The new Meyer system, it shouldn't be possible for both primary and backup to fail simultaneously unless someone made changes to the configuration without documenting them." Isabella finished her technical vocabulary suddenly precise. Leo glanced at her with newfound curiosity. "Yes, exactly. Show me." Powell led them through a door marked staff only and down a corridor to the AV control room. Inside, two technicians were frantically checking connections, while a young woman in formal attire, clearly not technical staff, watched with increasing distress. "The broadcast feeds to 7 satellite locations have been down for 8 minutes, she explained, voice tight. "That's over 1 million in donations potentially lost. We need to be back online before the final piece." Leo moved to the main control panel, his movements calm and methodical. He didn't ask permission, simply began assessing the system with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Isabella watched him work, noting how different he seemed here. No hesitation, no deference. His fingers moved across the controls with practiced precision. He asked the technicians several questions, his terminology precise and technical. After 2 minutes of focused work, he straightened. Someone updated the firmware but didn't adjust the protocol handler for the secondary system. "They're fighting each other." He glanced at Powell. "I need access to the master controller in the basement." Powell handed over his keycard. "Whatever you need." "I'll come with you," Isabella said suddenly. When Leo looked surprised, she added, "My company manufactured the core processors in that system. I might be useful." As they hurried through the building's lower levels, Isabella studied him more carefully. "You designed the integration," you said. "You're an engineer." Leo's smile was brief. "Was, Navy, specialized in communications systems. Now I just keep things running." The basement was a stark contrast to the ornate theater above. Concrete walls exposed pipes, the steady hum of machinery. Leo moved through it with practiced familiarity, arriving at a locked equipment room. Inside, he went directly to a rack of equipment, pulling a small multi-tool from his pocket. The gesture was automatic, the tool an extension of his hand. "Military habits," he explained, noticing her watching. "Always have a tool." "Smart policy," she replied, moving closer to examine the equipment. "This is one of our TCV 9000 processors." Leo nodded as he opened an access panel. "Good system, robust, but someone tried to update using the consumer protocol instead of the commercial variant." His fingers moved deftly, connecting a small diagnostic device he'd grabbed from a nearby workbench. "Should be an easy fix, but we'll need to reset both systems simultaneously." He explained what needed to be done, and Isabella nodded, moving to a secondary control panel. They worked in tandem, her following his instructions with quick precision. "Ready on your mark," she said, finger poised above a button. 3, 2, 1, execute." They pressed their respective buttons simultaneously. The lights on the control panel flickered, then stabilized in a steady green pattern. Leo's shoulders relaxed slightly. "That should do it. Let's check upstairs." When they returned to the control room, the atmosphere had transformed. The technicians were smiling with relief, and the young organizer was nearly weeping with gratitude. "Feeds are all back up. All 7 locations confirmed they're receiving." Leo nodded, already moving toward the door. "Good. Run a diagnostic after the performance document the fix, and don't let anyone update firmware without proper clearance again." Isabella followed him into the hallway. "You missed half the performance." He shrugged. "Duty calls. I should get back to my seat for the finale at least." "Wait," Isabella's voice stopped him. "That was impressive. You diagnosed and fixed in minutes what had a team of technicians baffled." "Just experience." Leo seemed uncomfortable with the praise. "No, it's more than that. You see systems differently." She studied him with growing interest. "Leo Mercer. Leo Mercer. Leo Mercer." She seemed to be committing it to memory. "I have a situation at my company, a technical problem we haven't been able to solve. Our best people have been working on it for weeks without success." Leo shifted his weight, uncertainty returning to his posture. "I'm sure you have access to better consultants than a theater maintenance man." "Clearly not, since they haven't solved it." Her gaze was direct, assessing. "I'd like to hire you as a consultant. 1 day of your time, generously compensated." Leo's expression revealed his skepticism. "Ms. Vance." "Isabella." "Isabella," he corrected himself. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not in your league. I fix practical problems with physical systems. Your company deals with cutting-edge technology." "That's exactly why I want you to look at our problem. Everyone's been focused on the software, the algorithms, the theoretical. But you," she gestured toward the equipment room, "you see connections others miss. You understand how systems actually work, not just how they're supposed to work." Leo's brow furrowed. The offer was both flattering and alarming. He wasn't accustomed to stepping outside his carefully defined boundaries. "I have responsibilities here, and my daughter—" "1 day," Isabella repeated. "Tomorrow, I'll pay you $5,000 for your time." Leo's expression froze. $5,000, 2 months' salary for a single day's work. Money that could go toward Maya's education fund, toward finally replacing the ancient furnace in their small apartment, toward breathing room in a life that had precious little of it. His practical nature reasserted itself. "And if I can't help, then you've lost nothing but a day and gained $5,000. She reached into her clutch and extracted a business card, offering it to him. "My direct number is on the back. Call me tonight if you're interested. We'll arrange everything." Leo accepted the card automatically, his calloused fingers closing around the heavy cardstock. "We should return," Isabella said, glancing at her watch. "We might catch the finale." They made their way back to the theater in silence, slipping into their seats just as the orchestra began Bernstein's final movement. But now Leo couldn't lose himself in the music. The card in his pocket seemed to burn with possibility and danger. When the performance ended and the crowd rose in applause, Isabella turned to him. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Leo Mercer. I hope to hear from you." Then she was gone, moving smoothly through the crowd of affluent patrons who parted naturally before her. Leo remained seated, waiting for the crowd to thin. He removed the business card from his pocket, examining its embossed surface in the gentle house lights. Vance Technologies, Isabella Vance, CEO, and on the back, handwritten in precise script, a phone number. A choice was before him: remain in the safe, predictable world he'd constructed for himself in Maya after the Navy after Sarah's death, or step into unknown territory that promised reward, but also risk. As the theater emptied around him, Leo Mercer made his decision. The Vance Technologies headquarters rose like a gleaming monolith of glass and steel in the heart of the business district. Leo stood before it, his reflection distorted in its polished surface. He wore his best shirt, still visibly worn at the cuffs, and carried a small canvas bag containing his tools, a notebook, and a drawing Maya had made him that morning. "For good luck, Daddy," she'd said, pressing the crayon creation into his hands. It showed a stick figure with a tool belt standing next to what appeared to be a robot. "Fix the computers." Now standing before the corporate temple of Vance Technologies, Leo drew a deep breath. He'd called the number last night, half expecting it to be disconnected or answered by an assistant who'd never heard of him. Instead, Isabella herself had answered, her voice betraying a hint of satisfaction when he accepted her offer. The security desk was his first obstacle. The guard looked at his worn jacket and canvas bag with thinly veiled suspicion until Leo provided his name. Something shifted in the guard's demeanor immediately. "Mr. Mercer, yes, you're expected. 52nd floor. Miss Vance's assistant will meet you at the elevator." The elevator ride was a swift, stomach-shifting ascent. Leo watched the numbers climb, each one taking him further from his familiar world of practical problems and straightforward solutions. At the 52nd floor, the doors opened onto a space of breathtaking minimalism. White walls, polished concrete floors, and a panoramic view that made the city below look like an architect's model. A young man in an impeccably tailored suit approached. "Mr. Mercer, I'm David, Ms. Vance's assistant. She's expecting you in the conference room. This way, please." Leo followed, acutely aware of the soft squeak his work boots made on the polished floor. They passed through an open workspace where dozens of young professionals sat before multiple monitors, all of them radiating an intensity that bordered on religious fervor. The conference room was walled-in glass, offering both a view of the city and complete visibility to the rest of the office. Inside, Isabella stood before a holographic display showing complex schematics. She was accompanied by a tall man whose suit probably cost more than Leo's car. "Leo," Isabella greeted him, her voice professional but with an undertone of warmth. "Thank you for coming. This is Marcus Reed, our VP of Operations." Reed's assessment of Leo was swift and dismissive, his gaze taking in the worn clothing and practical boots with poorly concealed disdain. His handshake was performative, a corporate ritual rather than a genuine greeting. "Mercer," he acknowledged with a thin smile. "Isabella tells me you're some sort of technical intuitive." Leo met his gaze steadily. "I solve problems, Mr. Reed. That's all." Isabella gestured toward the display. "Let me explain our situation. We're preparing to launch Nexus, an integrated neural interface that will revolutionize how humans interact with technology. It's scheduled for release in 3 weeks, but we've encountered a critical malfunction in the core processing unit." Leo studied the holographic display, trying to make sense of the complex schematics. "I should tell you that cutting-edge neural technology is well outside my expertise." "We have experts," Reed interjected. "What we need is a fresh perspective." Isabella nodded. "The malfunction occurs inconsistently. Our engineers can't replicate it reliably, which makes diagnosis nearly impossible. What they do know is that under certain conditions, the primary processor overheats and the auxiliary systems fail to engage properly." Leo's brow furrowed. "Sounds similar to what happened at the theater last night." "Exactly why I thought of you," Isabella agreed. "The difference is this isn't a simple firmware conflict. We've checked every line of code, every circuit pathway." Reed checked his watch with pointed impatience. "The testing lab is ready. Shetty, shall we?" They led Leo to a secure laboratory where several engineers in white coats were gathered around a central workstation. At its center sat what appeared to be a sleek headset connected to multiple diagnostic devices. This is the Nexus prototype, Isabella explained, the most advanced neural interface ever developed. It translates neural signals into digital commands with near zero latency. One of the engineers, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, approached. Dr. Chen, our lead developer, Isabella introduced. Mr. Mercer, Dr. Chen acknowledged, her tone neutral. Isabella says you have an unconventional approach to systems integration. Before Leo could respond, Reed cut in. Let's get to it. We've scheduled a demonstration of the malfunction at 11. Dr. Chen nodded. We've created conditions that typically trigger the failure. We'll run the standard diagnostic sequence, and you can observe. For the next hour, Leo watched as the team put the device through its paces. The technical jargon flew past him. Neural bandwidth, synaptic mimicry, quantum processing cores. But he focused on the physical behavior of the system, how it sounded, how it responded, the subtle vibrations when the cooling system engaged. At precisely 11:03 it happened. A warning light flashed on the diagnostic panel. The device emitted a high-pitched whine, and several displays began flashing error messages. Primary core temperature exceeding safety parameters, an automated voice announced. Auxiliary cooling system failure detected. The engineers moved with practiced urgency, shutting down the system before any damage could occur. Chen made notes on a tablet while Reed watched with thinly veiled frustration. That's the third time this week, he said, and still no explanation. Leo had been silent throughout, observing not just the device, but the room, the equipment, the entire environment. Now he spoke. May I, he asked, gesturing toward the device. Dr. Chen hesitated, then nodded. The system is safe to handle now. Leo approached, not touching the device itself, but examining its surroundings. He knelt to look at the underside of the workstation, then stood and studied the ceiling directly above. His gaze tracked the path of the ventilation system, the position of the lighting fixtures. When was this testing room last reconfigured, he asked. The question seemed to surprise them. Dr. Chen consulted her tablet. 6 weeks ago, we installed the new diagnostic array and reorganized the workstation layout. Leo nodded, then reached into his canvas bag and withdrew his multi-tool. May I open this floor panel? He asked, pointing to a service access point near the workstation. Reed's impatience boiled over. For God's sake, we're not looking for a lost earring. This is a sophisticated neural interface worth millions in R&D. The problem is in the auxiliary cooling system's software interface, not under the floor. Leo remained calm. Maybe, but I'd still like to check. Isabella studied him for a moment, then nodded. Let him look, Marcus. With permission granted, Leo knelt and carefully removed the floor panel, revealing a tangle of cables and an access point to the building's ventilation system. He examined it carefully, then reached in with his multi-tool to extract something. Here's your problem, he said, holding up what appeared to be a small metal clip. This is a mounting bracket from the old workstation configuration. When you reorganized it, fell into the vent and has been partially blocking airflow to this section of the room. He continued his explanation, simple but precise. Your device's primary cooling system works fine in normal conditions. But when the room temperature increases even slightly due to this blockage, the system has to work harder. That creates a specific vibration pattern that's interfering with the sensor that should activate the auxiliary cooling. The room fell silent. Dr. Chen moved forward, taking the metal clip from Leo's hand and examining it with growing comprehension. A mechanical issue causing an electronic misread, she murmured. We were so focused on the software. Reed's expression was a study in conflicting emotions, relief that a solution might be at hand, but dismay that it had come from such an unexpected and humbling source. That's impossible, he finally managed. A piece of metal in a vent couldn't possibly cause such a specific malfunction. Leo shrugged. Systems don't exist in isolation, Mr. Reed. They're affected by their environment by seemingly unrelated factors. In the Navy, we called it environmental cascade failure. One small thing leads to another, which triggers another until you have a major malfunction that seems unrelated to the original issue. Isabella was watching Leo with growing interest. Let's test it, clear the blockage, and run another diagnostic. The engineers quickly removed the obstruction and cleaned the vent thoroughly. When they ran the test again, the system performed flawlessly, even under the conditions that had previously triggered a failure. Dr. Chen's respect was evident in her voice. Remarkable. We would never have found this. Reed was less enthusiastic. Lucky guess, he muttered, but the relief in his posture betrayed his words. Isabella, however, was watching Leo with an expression that went beyond professional appreciation. Not luck, she said quietly. Perspective. After the successful test, Isabella suggested they break for lunch. She led Leo to a private dining room with a view that stretched to the horizon, the city spread beneath them, like a living circuit board. That was impressive, she said as they sat at a table that probably cost more than Leo's entire apartment. You solved in an hour what our team couldn't resolve in weeks. Leo looked uncomfortable with the praise. It wasn't particularly clever, just experience with how physical systems interact. Don't diminish it, Isabella countered. That not particularly clever solution just saved my company millions and kept our product launch on schedule. She studied him over her water glass. You said you were in the Navy. Leo nodded. 15 years. Communications systems specialist. I worked my way up to chief petty officer before. He paused, something shadowing his expression. Before, Isabella prompted gently. Before my wife got sick. The words came out evenly, but his fingers tensed almost imperceptibly around his water glass. I transferred to shore duty, then took an early discharge to care for her and our daughter. Isabella's expression softened. I'm sorry. Leo acknowledged this with a slight nod. Sarah passed 3 years ago. Cancer. Now it's just Maya and me. Your daughter, she's the artist. Isabella gestured toward the edge of a drawing visible in his canvas bag. A genuine smile broke across Leo's face. She is, 8 years old and convinced her dad can fix anything. The smile faded slightly. I try not to disappoint her. Isabella sensed the weight behind those words. The burden of being both mother and father, of maintaining strength when your own foundation had been shaken. What made you choose theater maintenance after the Navy? She asked, genuinely curious. With your skills, you could have gone into any number of more lucrative fields. Leo considered the question. Predictability. After Sarah died, Maya needed stability. Regular hours, no travel, a consistent routine. He shrugged slightly. The theater's 5 blocks from our apartment. I can walk Maya to school every morning and still make it to work on time. Isabella absorbed this, thinking of her own life structured around global markets and innovation timelines. The concept of organizing one's entire professional existence around a child's well-being was both foreign and oddly compelling. And the music, she asked. You clearly have a deep appreciation for it. Sarah was a music teacher. Leo explained, his voice warming with the memory. Classical piano. She could make a beat-up, upright sound like a concert grand. His eyes met Isabella's. Maya has her talent. I'm making sure she has the chance to develop it. Their lunch arrived. Isabella's executive chef had prepared something that looked like artwork on a plate. Leo approached it with the same careful attention he'd given the neural interface, making Isabella smile. As they ate, the conversation shifted to advanced technologies. Isabella explained the vision behind the Nexus interface, a seamless integration of human cognition and digital systems that would transform everything from education to medicine. We're not just creating another gadget, she said, her passion evident. We're laying the groundwork for true human enhancement. Imagine a world where knowledge isn't just accessible, it's integrated, where learning isn't memorization but true understanding. Leo listened, asking occasional questions that revealed a thoughtful intelligence beneath his practical exterior. Isabella found herself explaining complex technical concepts without the usual simplification she employed with non-specialists. He grasped the implications quickly, often before she finished her explanations. You understand this better than most of my board members, she observed. Leo gave a self-deprecating smile. I read a lot. Not much else to do on deployment, and it keeps the mind sharp. As lunch concluded, Isabella leaned forward slightly. Leo, I have a proposal for you. The Nexus project faces other integration challenges as we move toward launch. I'd like to bring you on as a special consultant for the next 3 weeks. Your perspective could be invaluable. Leo's expression registered surprise. Ms. Vance. Isabella, she corrected automatically. Isabella, he amended. I appreciate the offer, but I have commitments at the theater, and Maya. We'll work around your schedule, she interrupted. Mornings only while Maya's at school. We'll double your theater salary, and you'll receive a completion bonus when Nexus launches successfully. She named a figure that made Leo's eyes widen slightly. That's generous, he said carefully. It's practical, Isabella countered. You solved a problem today that had our entire R&D team stumped. That's value, and I compensate for value. She leaned back, giving him space. Think about it. Talk to the theater, see if they'll grant you a temporary schedule adjustment. Let me know by tomorrow. Leo nodded slowly. I will. Thank you for the opportunity. As they rose to leave, Isabella asked a question that had been lingering in her mind. Last night at the concert, what brought you there? It didn't seem like your usual environment. Leo's expression softened. Maya's music teacher said she should hear a professional orchestra at least once. Experience the music live, not just on recordings. A small smile touched his lips, worth every penny. Isabella studied him, this man who would spend 3 days' wages so his daughter could hear an orchestra, who organized his life around a child's needs rather than his own ambitions, who saw connections others missed because he viewed the world as an integrated whole, not disconnected systems. I'm glad you were there, she said simply. As they walked back toward the laboratory, they passed through the main work area where dozens of young engineers and programmers were huddled over their stations. The energy was palpable, the driven intensity of people creating the future. Mr. Mercer. They turned to see Dr. Chen approaching rapidly, her usual composure replaced by barely contained excitement. We've been running continuous tests since clearing the vent, she reported. Perfect performance across all parameters. The system is stable even under extreme conditions. She looked at him with newfound respect. You've saved us weeks of work. Before Leo could respond, a sharp voice cut through the moment. Let's not get carried away. Marcus Reed approached his tall frame, radiating corporate authority. A fortunate observation, certainly, but hardly revolutionary. Our team would have identified the issue eventually. Dr. Chen's expression suggested otherwise, but she remained silent. Marcus, Isabella acknowledged, her tone cooling noticeably. Dr. Chen was just updating us on the successful test results. Yes, I heard. Reed's smile didn't reach his eyes. Wonderful news. However, before we declare victory, I should mention that our security protocols flagged something unusual. He turned his attention fully to Leo. It seems Mr. Mercer accessed our company database this morning from a guest terminal. Leo's brow furrowed in confusion. I didn't. The logs show otherwise, Reed continued smoothly. Specifically, you accessed files related to the Nexus project's core architecture, files well beyond what was necessary for today's consultation. Isabella's expression sharpened. That's a serious accusation, Marcus. Not an accusation, merely an observation. Reed's tone remained measured. Given Mr. Mercer's unusual background and sudden appearance in our project, I thought it prudent to mention. Leo's face had gone very still, his eyes focused on Reed with the steady assessment of a man who had faced worse threats. I haven't accessed any terminal since arriving, Mr. Reed. I've been either in the testing lab or with Ms. Vance the entire time. The logs, Reed began, can be verified against security footage, Isabella interrupted, which I'm sure you've already checked, Marcus. A flicker of hesitation crossed Reed's face. The investigation is ongoing. Isabella's voice took on a dangerous edge. Then perhaps you should complete it before making insinuations about our guest. She turned to Leo. I apologize for this, Leo. I assure you we'll get to the bottom of it. Leo nodded, but something had changed in his demeanor. The relaxed openness from lunch had been replaced by a careful guardedness. Of course, security is important, especially with technology this sensitive. Reed smiled thinly. I'm glad you understand. In the meantime, perhaps it would be best if Mr. Mercer's access was limited to the specific areas necessary for his consultation. Isabella's reply was immediate. That won't be necessary. Leo has my complete confidence. The tension between them was palpable, stretching the moment into uncomfortable territory. Finally, Reed inclined his head in a gesture that acknowledged Isabella's authority without conceding the point. As you wish. If you'll excuse me, I have a board briefing to prepare. He turned and walked away, his posture rigid with controlled frustration. After he left, Isabella turned to Leo. I apologize for Marcus. He can be territorial about the Nexus project. Leo's expression remained neutral. No need to apologize. He's right to be cautious. He glanced at his watch. I should be going. I promised Maya I'd be home for dinner. Something in his tone had changed, a distance that hadn't been there before. Isabella felt a twinge of regret, aware that Reed's accusation had damaged the fragile trust they'd been building. Of course, David will see you out. She hesitated, then added, about the consultation offer. I'll think about it. Leo said, his voice giving nothing away. Thank you for today, Ms. Vance. It was educational. Isabella watched him go, noting how his shoulders had tensed, how the easy confidence he'd displayed in the lab had been replaced by the careful reserve she'd first observed at the concert. As he disappeared into the elevator, she made a decision. Reed's interference would not go unchallenged, and Leo Mercer would not slip away so easily. She had seen something in him, a unique perspective, an integrity increasingly rare in her world of ambition and advancement at any cost. The Nexus project needed him, and perhaps though she was only beginning to acknowledge it, she needed his perspective as well. The evening light filtered through the windows of Leo's small apartment, casting long shadows across the worn but meticulously maintained furniture. Maya sat at the kitchen table, her homework spread before her, pencil moving in careful concentration. Leo stood at the stove stirring a pot of spaghetti sauce, his mind still turning over the events of the day. Is it almost ready, Daddy? Maya asked, looking up from her math worksheet. I'm starving. Leo smiled, pushing aside his troubled thoughts. 5 more minutes. How's the homework coming? Almost done. Ms. Rodriguez says I'm getting really good at fractions. She beamed with pride, then tilted her head, studying him. Did you fix the computers today? The question brought a wry smile to his face. Something like that. Was it hard? No, he said, stirring the sauce thoughtfully. Actually, it was pretty simple. Sometimes the hardest problems have the simplest solutions. Maya nodded sagely, as though this confirmed a deep truth she'd always suspected. Like when my tablet wouldn't work and you just needed to hold the button down longer. Exactly like that. They ate dinner at their small table, Maya chattering about her day, the music lessons she'd had, the story they'd read in class, the playground, politics that seemed as complex as any military operation Leo had ever been part of. He listened attentively, asking questions, marveling at how she'd grown from the solemn 4-year-old who'd clung to him at Sarah's funeral into this vibrant, resilient child. After dinner, after homework review and bath time and 2 bedtime stories, Leo sat on the edge of Maya's bed. Her room was small but cheerful, decorated with music notes and the colorful drawings she produced in seemingly endless supply. Daddy, she said sleepily, clutching her worn stuffed elephant, did you like fixing the computers better than fixing the theater? The question caught him off guard. Why do you ask that? She shrugged her small shoulders, rising and falling beneath her favorite pajamas. You seemed different when you came home. Like when you fix something really hard at the theater and feel proud. Leo smoothed her hair, wondering when his daughter had become so perceptive. It was interesting, he admitted. Different from what I usually do. Are you going to do it again? The question echoed his own internal debate. Isabella's offer lingered in his mind. The generous compensation, the challenge of the work, the chance to use skills that had lain dormant for too long. I might, he said carefully. Would that be okay with you? I'd still be home when you get back from school, but I might not be at the theater in the mornings for a while. Maya considered this seriously. Would you be happier? The simple question struck him to the core. Happiness had become such a secondary consideration in his life, subordinated to survival, to stability, to ensuring Maya's well-being. He hadn't really considered whether the work itself might bring him satisfaction. I think, he said slowly, I might enjoy the challenge. Maya nodded, decision made. Then you should do it. Mom always said you were super smart about fixing complicated things. Leo's throat tightened unexpectedly. She did, didn't she? Uh-huh. She said you could fix anything except her piano playing. Maya grinned sleepily, repeating one of Sarah's favorite jokes. Leo leaned down and kissed her forehead. Good night, sweet pea. Love you to the moon. And back again, she murmured, already drifting towards sleep. Twice around. After Maya was asleep, Leo sat at the small desk in the living room, Isabella's business card in his hand. The incident with Reed troubled him. The accusation of accessing secure files was absurd. He hadn't been near a computer terminal all day, but it revealed an undercurrent of suspicion he hadn't anticipated. Yet the work itself had been satisfying in a way his position at the theater rarely was. Using his training, seeing a complex problem yield to practical insight. It had awakened something in him he had almost forgotten existed. And then there was Isabella herself. Their lunch conversation replayed in his mind. She'd listened to him, really listened, with an intensity few people demonstrated. Despite the vast differences in their circumstances, there had been moments of genuine connection. Leo reached for his phone. Before he could reconsider, he dialed the number on the back of the card. She answered on the second ring. Isabella Vance. Ms. Vance, it's Leo Mercer. There was a pause, then her voice warmed slightly. Leo, I was hoping you'd call. About your offer, he began, then hesitated. Before I give you my answer, I need to address what happened today with Mr. Reed. Of course, her tone turned professional. I've reviewed the security logs myself. There was indeed an attempt to access Nexus files from a guest terminal, but the timestamp coincides with when you were in the testing lab with Dr. Chen. Security footage confirms you were nowhere near that terminal. Then someone else used my credentials. It appears so. Her voice hardened slightly. We're investigating, but I want to be clear, you are not under suspicion. The attempt was clumsy, almost as if someone wanted it to be discovered. Leo processed this information. Office politics, a short, humorless laugh. You could say that Marcus has concerns about the direction of the Nexus project and about my leadership decisions. Leo considered his next words carefully. Ms. Vance, Isabella, please. Isabella, he amended. I don't want to step into a corporate battleground. I have Maya to consider. I understand completely. Her voice softened. This is about your expertise, not our internal politics. I give you my word that you'll be insulated from any fallout. And the schedule we discussed, mornings only while Maya is at school, that stands. Leo made his decision. In that case, I'd like to accept your offer. I've already spoken with Powell at the theater. He's agreed to adjust my schedule for the next 3 weeks. Excellent. The satisfaction in her voice was evident. Can you start tomorrow? I'd like you to meet with Dr. Chen's team to review the full integration plan. I'll be there at 8:30. Perfect. And Leo, she paused. Thank you. I believe this collaboration will be valuable for both of us. After they hung up, Leo sat in the quiet apartment listening to the familiar sounds of the old building settling around him. He was stepping into unknown territory, a world of corporate intrigue and cutting-edge technology, far removed from his carefully constructed routine. Yet for the first time in years, he felt a spark of something beyond mere survival, a sense of purpose of using the full range of his abilities. For Maya's sake, he'd narrowed his life to its simplest, safest parameters. Perhaps now, for both their sakes, it was time to expand those boundaries, even if just a little. The following morning, Leo arrived at Vance Technologies precisely at 8:30. The security guard recognized him immediately, issuing him a temporary access badge with efficiency that suggested direct instructions from above. Mr. Mercer, good morning. David, Isabella's assistant, was waiting at the elevator. Ms. Vance asked me to escort you to the development lab. She'll join you shortly. The development lab occupied the entire 51st floor, a vast open space divided into specialized work areas. Engineers and programmers moved between stations with purpose, their conversations a mixture of technical jargon and excited debate. The energy was palpable, the sense of creation almost tangible. Dr. Chen met him at the entrance, her demeanor noticeably warmer than the previous day. Mr. Mercer, welcome to where Nexus is born. She gestured toward the central area where several prototypes sat on specialized workstations. We've been running continuous tests since your discovery yesterday. The system's stability has improved by 87%. Leo nodded, taking in the complex array of equipment. Glad to hear it. Isabella mentioned you wanted to review the full integration plan. Yes, though I was surprised when she said you'd be joining the team. Dr. Chen led him to a conference area separated from the main lab by glass walls. Most consultants don't get this level of access. Leo chose his words carefully. I'm here to offer a practical perspective. Sometimes it helps to have someone looking at the system who isn't immersed in the theoretical aspects. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. An outside view. I can see the value in that. She activated a holographic display showing a complex schematic. This is the complete Nexus architecture. The neural interface you saw yesterday is just one component of a much larger system. For the next hour, Chen walked Leo through the Nexus platform, a revolutionary integration of neural sensing quantum computing and advanced machine learning algorithms. The technology was beyond anything Leo had encountered, but the underlying principles of systems integration were familiar territory. He asked questions focused on practical implementation, heat management, signal interference, power consumption. Each query revealed potential issues that the development team had either overlooked or considered secondary to the more sophisticated aspects of the design. These are excellent questions, Dr. Chen admitted. We've been so focused on the neural mapping algorithms that some of these practical considerations haven't received enough attention. Leo studied a simulation of the system's operation. It's impressive technology, but users won't care about the elegance of the algorithms if the device overheats or the battery dies unexpectedly. Dr. Chen smiled wryly. You sound like Isabella. She's always pushing us to think about the user experience, not just the technology. Smart approach, Leo commented. The most brilliant innovation is worthless if people can't or won't use it. Their discussion was interrupted when Isabella entered, dressed in a tailored suit that somehow managed to convey both authority and accessibility. Good morning, I see Dr. Chen is bringing you up to speed. Leo nodded. The technology is remarkable. And Mr. Mercer's questions have been insightful, Dr. Chen added. He's identified several integration issues we need to address before launch. Isabella looked pleased. Excellent. Can you join us for the executive briefing at 10 a.m? I'd like the leadership team to hear your perspective directly. Leo hesitated. I'm not sure I'm prepared for a formal presentation. No presentation necessary, Isabella assured him. Just your honest assessment of what you've seen so far. At 10 Leo found himself in the main conference room, seated at a massive table with Isabella and the senior leadership of Advanced Technologies. Marcus Reed sat directly across from him, his expression neutral, but his eyes watchful. Isabella opened the meeting with a project status update, her command of both the technical details and market considerations impressive. She then introduced Leo, describing him simply as a systems integration consultant brought in to address stability issues. Mr. Mercer has already solved the overheating problem that was threatening our launch timeline, she explained. I've asked him to continue working with Dr. Chen's team to identify any other potential integration issues. Reed leaned forward slightly. And what exactly is Mr. Mercer's background in neural interface technology? Before Leo could respond, Isabella answered smoothly. Leo brings a valuable outsider perspective with extensive experience in complex systems integration from his military career. Sometimes the most critical insights come from fresh eyes. The meeting continued with various department heads reporting on their areas of responsibility. Leo remained mostly silent, observing the dynamics of the team. It was clear that while Isabella commanded respect, there were factions within the leadership, those aligned with her vision and those more closely allied with Reed. When Dr. Chen presented the technical readiness assessment, she highlighted the issues Leo had identified that morning. These integration concerns could impact user experience if not addressed. Mr. Mercer has suggested several practical solutions we're implementing immediately. Reed's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. These seem like minor issues that our QA team would have caught in final testing. Perhaps, Dr. Chen acknowledged. But addressing them now saves us time and resources later, and potentially prevents user experience issues that could damage initial market reception, Isabella added. First impressions are critical for new technology adoption. As the meeting concluded, Isabella turned to Leo. Any observations you'd like to share with the team? All eyes turned to him. Leo felt acutely out of place in this room of corporate executives, but reminded himself that he had earned his expertise through years of practical experience. Just one, he said, his voice steady. The Nexus technology is impressive, possibly revolutionary. But from what I've seen, there's a tendency to prioritize algorithmic elegance over practical robustness. In my experience, users care more about reliability than theoretical perfection. There was a moment of silence, then one of the executives, the chief marketing officer, nodded vigorously. That aligns perfectly with our user research. Early adopters will tolerate limited functionality if it works flawlessly within those limits. Isabella smiled slightly. Thank you, Leo. That's precisely why your perspective is valuable to us. She closed the meeting efficiently, and as the executives filed out, she motioned for Leo to remain. When they were alone, she dropped her formal demeanor slightly. You did well. These briefings can be intimidating, even for seasoned executives. Leo smiled wryly. I've faced scarier situations, although usually they involved less expensive suits and more immediate physical danger. Isabella laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her features. I imagine so. Military experience provides a useful perspective on what constitutes a true crisis. She gathered her tablet and notes. I have meetings for the rest of the morning, but I'd like you to continue working with Dr. Chen's team. Focus on the user experience aspects. What could go wrong in real-world conditions that perfect lab testing might miss? That's where my experience is most relevant, Leo agreed. As they walked toward the door, Isabella added, by the way, I've instructed security to issue you a proper access card. No more escort required. You'll have clearance for the development floors and my office level. That's a lot of trust, Leo observed. Isabella met his gaze directly. Yes, it is. Don't make me regret it. The next week fell into a new routine. Leo arrived at Advanced Technologies each morning after dropping Maya at school. He spent the hours until noon working closely with Dr. Chen's team, examining the Nexus system from every practical angle, identifying potential failure points, and suggesting solutions. His approach was methodical and unpretentious, focused on asking the questions that highly specialized experts sometimes overlooked. Why did this component generate more heat than expected? What happened if the power fluctuated during a critical operation? How would environmental factors like humidity or temperature extremes affect performance? The development team, initially skeptical of this outsider, with his old-fashioned multi-tool and practical questions, gradually came to respect his insights. Leo didn't pretend to understand the cutting-edge neuroscience or quantum computing algorithms, but his understanding of how complex systems functioned or failed in real-world conditions proved invaluable. Each day at noon, Leo would leave promptly, returning to the theater for his afternoon maintenance duties before picking up Maya from school. The dual roles kept him grounded, moving between the gleaming, future-focused world of advanced technologies and the practical, immediate needs of the historic theater. On the fourth day, Leo was deep in discussion with one of the hardware engineers when he became aware of Isabella watching from the doorway. She had been absent the previous day, traveling to meet with potential investors. A moment of your time, Leo, she requested, gesturing toward her office. Leo followed her to the elevator, conscious of the curious glances from the development team. Isabella's personal attention to a consultant was evidently unusual. Her office occupied a corner of the top floor with panoramic views of the city. Unlike the minimalist corporate aesthetic of the conference rooms, this space contained personal touches. Art that appeared chosen for genuine appreciation rather than investment value books that showed signs of actual reading. Please sit, she offered, indicating a seating area near the windows rather than the more formal desk arrangement. How are you finding the work so far? Challenging, Leo admitted. The technology is beyond anything I've encountered, but the integration principles are familiar. Isabella nodded. Dr. Chen speaks highly of your contributions. She says you have identified at least 3 critical failure scenarios their testing protocols wouldn't have caught. Leo shrugged slightly. I just think about what could go wrong in less than ideal conditions. Lab testing can't account for every real-world variable. Precisely why your perspective is valuable. Isabella studied him thoughtfully. You're different from our usual consultants. They typically arrive with PowerPoint presentations and theoretical frameworks. You bring practical wisdom and a genuine desire to solve problems. I'm not comfortable with theory, Leo admitted. I need to see how things actually work, not how they're supposed to work on paper. Isabella smiled, a rare quality in this industry. She hesitated, then continued in a slightly different tone. I've been meaning to ask, how is your daughter adjusting to your new schedule? The question surprised him. Maya, she's fine. Actually, she's quite proud that her dad is fixing super advanced computers, as she puts it. She sounds remarkable. She is. Leo's expression softened. She's resilient like her mother. The last few years haven't been easy, but she adapts, finds joy in small things. Isabella's gaze became thoughtful. Children often manage change better than adults. We become set in our patterns, resistant to disruption. She looked out at the city sprawled below. Sometimes I wonder if all this innovation we pursue actually improves human lives or just changes them. Leo followed her gaze. That depends on who controls the innovation, I suppose. Technology itself is neutral. It's the application that matters. Exactly. Isabella turned back to him, suddenly animated. That's the core philosophy behind Nexus. We're not just creating technology for its own sake. We're trying to augment human capability to remove barriers to learning and connection. The passion in her voice was compelling. For a moment, Leo glimpsed the vision that drove her. Not just corporate success or technological advancement, but a genuine belief in human potential. That's an admirable goal, he said carefully, though power like that comes with significant responsibility. Yes, it does. Her expression grew serious, which is why the integration issues you're identifying are so critical. Nexus must be not just revolutionary, but reliable, safe, trustworthy. She leaned forward slightly. People will literally be interfacing their neural processes with our technology. The margin for error is zero. Leo nodded, understanding the weight of what she was describing. I'll keep that firmly in mind as we continue testing. And their conversation shifted to specific technical concerns, but something had changed in their interaction. A deeper level of trust, perhaps, or mutual recognition of shared values beneath their very different exteriors. As Leo prepared to leave, Isabella walked him to the elevator. By the way, she said casually, there's a chamber orchestra performing at the West Side Cultural Center on Saturday evening. Bach's Brandenburg Concertos. I have an extra ticket if you'd be interested. The invitation caught Leo off guard. That's very kind, but Saturday evenings are difficult. Maya's babysitter isn't available weekends. Isabella nodded, accepting the implicit refusal without awkwardness. Of course, family comes first. Perhaps another time. As the elevator doors closed between them, Leo found himself unexpectedly regretful. The Brandenburg Concertos had been among Sarah's favorites. He'd loved to hear them performed live. And the conversation with Isabella had been stimulating. Different from his usual interactions, which revolved around practical needs and responsibilities rather than ideas and possibilities. The thought lingered as he made his way to the theater for his afternoon shift. For the first time in years, he was aware of how narrowly he had defined his life, how carefully he had avoided anything that might disrupt the stable routine he'd created for Maya's sake. And for the first time, he wondered if perhaps they both might be ready for a careful expansion of that carefully constructed world. By the beginning of the second week, Leo had become a familiar presence in the development lab. His methodical approach had uncovered several potential issues in the Nexus system, each one addressed with increasing respect from the technical team. On Tuesday morning, he arrived to find the lab in a state of controlled chaos. Dr. Chen greeted him with evident relief. Thank goodness you're here. We've encountered a new problem with the neural mapping subsystem. She led him to the main testing station, where a Nexus prototype was displaying error messages across multiple screens. The system passed all standard diagnostics yesterday evening, but this morning it's rejecting neural input patterns it previously accepted. Leo studied the error logs, noting the pattern of failures. When did this start exactly? 6:17 this morning, one of the engineers supplied. The overnight testing cycle was normal until then. No hardware changes, no software updates. Leo frowned. What changed at 6:17? The team exchanged glances. Nothing that we can identify, Dr. Chen admitted. The building systems came online at 6 hours as usual, HVAC security core networks. But none of that should affect the isolated test environment. Leo considered this, his mind working through the possibilities. The system didn't change, but its environment might have. Let me see the power supply configuration. He traced the connections from the testing station to the building's power infrastructure, methodically checking each component. After 20 minutes of careful inspection, he paused at a junction box near the floor. Here's your problem, he said, pointing to a small device connected to the power line. This is a network monitoring module standard for building management systems, But it's not standard issue. It's been modified. Dr. Chen knelt beside him, examining the device. You're right, this isn't our equipment. Her expression darkened. Someone installed this without authorization. Leo carefully disconnected the device. It's introducing a specific interference pattern in the power supply, subtle but enough to disrupt the sensitive neural mapping functions. Sabotage? One of the engineers asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. I can't say for certain, Leo replied carefully, but this isn't an accident or a system failure. Someone deliberately placed this device here, knowing it would cause problems. Dr. Chen's expression was grim. I need to report this to Isabella immediately, and security. While Dr. Chen made her calls, Leo examined the device more closely, using his multi-tool to carefully open its casing. Inside, he found sophisticated circuitry designed specifically to introduce minute power fluctuations, imperceptible to most electronics, but disruptive to the highly sensitive Nexus system. Isabella arrived 20 minutes later, her expression controlled, but her eyes betraying concern. Security personnel followed, documenting the device and its placement. Marcus Reed arrived shortly after, his face a mask of corporate concern. Deliberate sabotage, Isabella stated flatly after reviewing the evidence. The question is internal or external. Reed's expression hardened. This is deeply concerning. Who would have the knowledge and access to target the Nexus system so specifically? All eyes turned to Leo, who had remained silent during the initial investigation. The device is sophisticated, he said, custom-built to affect this specific system. Whoever created it understood both the Nexus technology and this building's power infrastructure. Isabella absorbed this assessment, meaning someone with intimate knowledge of our project, an insider threat. Reed shook his head in apparent disbelief. This is precisely why I've advocated for stricter security protocols. Our competitive advantage is at risk. This doesn't feel like industrial espionage, Leo observed quietly. The device wasn't designed to steal information, just to cause problems that would be difficult to diagnose. Isabella's gaze sharpened. Suggesting what exactly? Leo chose his words with care, aware of the political undercurrents. Someone who wants to delay the project, perhaps, or undermine confidence in it. Reed silent during the initial investigation. The device is sophisticated, he said, custom-built to affect this specific system. Whoever created it understood both the Nexus technology and this building's power infrastructure. Isabella absorbed this assessment, meaning someone with intimate knowledge of our project, an insider threat. Reed shook his head in apparent disbelief. This is precisely why I've advocated for stricter security protocols. Our competitive advantage is at risk. This doesn't feel like industrial espionage, Leo observed quietly. The device wasn't designed to steal information, just to cause problems that would be difficult to diagnose. Isabella's gaze sharpened. Suggesting what exactly? Leo chose his words with care, aware of the political undercurrents. Someone who wants to delay the project, perhaps, or undermine confidence in it. Reed bristled visibly. That's a serious insinuation, Mr. Mercer. It's a logical assessment based on the evidence. Isabella countered, her tone leaving no room for argument. Security will conduct a full investigation. In the meantime, Dr. Chen, how quickly can your team recover from this disruption? Now that we've identified the cause, we can recalibrate the affected systems within hours, Dr. Chen replied. Mr. Mercer's quick diagnosis prevented what could have been days of troubleshooting. Isabella nodded. Good work, everyone. Leo, a word in private, please. And they moved to a small conference room adjacent to the lab. Once the door closed, Isabella's composed exterior showed the first cracks of genuine concern. This is a significant escalation, she said, pacing the small space. First the security breach using your credentials, now this. Leo watched her, noting the tension in her movements. You suspect these incidents are connected. Don't you? She stopped pacing, fixing him with an intense gaze. Someone is systematically attempting to undermine the Nexus project. The question is we. Leo considered his next words carefully. In my experience, sabotage usually stems from one of three motivations: financial gain, ideological opposition, or personal grievance. Isabella nodded slowly. The Nexus represents billions in potential market value, so financial motivation is clear. As for ideology, she frowned. There are groups opposed to neural interface technology on principle concerned about privacy and autonomy, but they wouldn't have this level of access, which leaves personal grievance, Leo concluded. Isabella's expression tightened. Marcus has been pushing for a different direction with the technology, more focus on commercial applications, less on the educational and medical uses I've prioritized. But sabotage? That's a significant leap from corporate disagreement. I'm not suggesting anything specific, Leo clarified, just outlining possibilities. Isabella studied him for a moment. You are very careful with your assessments. Military training, partly that, Leo acknowledged, and partly knowing what it's like to be an outsider stepping into established territory. I'm here to help with technical integration, not corporate politics. Yet you've landed squarely in the middle of both. Isabella sighed as some of the tension leaving her shoulders. I appreciate your discretion, Leo, and your expertise. Without you, we might not have identified the device for days. Just doing what you hired me for, he replied simply. Isabella's phone chimed with an incoming message. She glanced at it, her expression shifting to one of controlled anger. The board has called an emergency meeting this afternoon. Marcus works quickly. He's using the security incident to challenge your leadership, Leo surmised. Of course he is. Isabella's voice was cool but determined. He's been waiting for an opportunity like this. Nexus is my vision, the culmination of years of work. I won't let it be corrupted into just another profit center. The passion in her voice was unmistakable. For all her corporate polish and strategic calculation, Isabella Vance genuinely believed in the transformative potential of her technology. It wasn't just business for her, it was purpose. What can I do to help? Leo asked, surprising himself with the offer. Isabella considered him thoughtfully. Continue working with Dr. Chen's team. Keep the technical development on track while I handle the politics. Your perspective remains valuable, perhaps now more than ever. As Leo turned to leave, Isabella added, and Leo, be careful. Whoever placed that device has access to secure areas and technical knowledge. Until we identify them, everyone is under suspicion. The warning followed Leo throughout the morning as he helped the development team recover from the sabotage attempt. By noon, the systems were stabilized, but an undercurrent of tension remained. Who among the dozens of people with access to the lab could have placed the device? The question lingered, casting a shadow of suspicion over every interaction. As Leo prepared to leave for his afternoon shift at the theater, Dr. Chen approached him. A moment, Mr. Mercer. She led him to a quiet corner of the lab. I wanted to thank you privately for your help this morning. Without your practical approach, we might have spent days chasing software ghosts. Just doing my job, Leo replied. Dr. Chen's expression became more serious. I also wanted to warn you. Marcus Reed has been asking questions about your background, your qualifications, your relationship with Isabella. Leo's expression revealed nothing. I have nothing to hide, Dr. Chen. My background is exactly as I've represented it. I'm sure it is, she agreed, but office politics at Vance can be brutal. Isabella has made powerful enemies with her vision for Nexus. They see you as her ally, which makes you a target by association. The warning was unexpected, but not entirely surprising. I appreciate your concern, Leo said, but I'm just a temporary consultant. My role here ends when Nexus launches. Dao Chen smiled slightly. Perhaps, but you've already made more impact than most consultants who stay for years. She glanced toward the executive floor. Isabella values your perspective, not just technically, but personally. That's rare. Before Leo could respond to this insight, his phone vibrated with an incoming call. The screen showed Maya's school. His heart rate immediately accelerated. Excuse me, I need to take this, he said, stepping away. The call was brief but concerning. Maya had fallen during recess, possibly fracturing her wrist. She was being taken to the Children's Hospital emergency room, and they needed him there as soon as possible. Leo ended the call, adrenaline and parental concern flooding his system. He quickly explained the situation to Dr. Chen, who immediately understood. Go, of course. Family comes first. Leo hurried toward the elevator, mentally calculating the fastest route to the hospital. As he waited for the elevator, Isabella emerged from a meeting room engaged in tense conversation with several board members. She noticed Leo's expression immediately and broke away from the group. What's wrong? She asked without preamble. Maya's been injured at school. Possible broken wrist. I need to get to the children's hospital. Isabella didn't hesitate. Take my car. It's waiting downstairs. I was supposed to attend a lunch meeting. David will instruct the driver to take you directly to the hospital. The offer was unexpected, but exactly what he needed. Thank you. I'll make up the time tomorrow. Don't be ridiculous. Isabella dismissed the concern with a wave. Go to your daughter. Keep me updated if you need anything. Leo nodded gratefully and hurried to the elevator. As the doors closed, he caught a glimpse of Marcus Reed watching the exchange, his expression calculating. The hospital emergency room was organized chaos, the familiar combination of efficiency and urgency that Leo remembered from his military days. He found Maya in a curtained examination area, her face tear-stained, but composed a temporary splint on her left wrist. Daddy. Her face brightened when she saw him. Leo was at her side instantly, carefully hugging her while avoiding the injured arm. Hey, sweet pea, what happened? I fell from the monkey bars, she explained, a hint of pride mixing with the pain in her voice. I almost made it all the way across for the first time, but then my hand slipped. The school nurse who had accompanied her filled in the details. The doctor arrived shortly after confirming that X-rays showed a clean fracture that wouldn't require surgery, just a cast and careful monitoring. The next few hours passed in a blur of forms, instructions, and the careful process of casting Maya's small arm. She chose purple for her cast, declaring it would match her favorite dress for the upcoming school concert. By late afternoon, they were finally cleared to leave. Leo was helping Maya with her jacket when his phone buzzed with a text message. How is Maya? Do you need anything? IV. The concern was unexpected. Leo typed a quick reply. Clean fracture, purple cast. She's okay, just tired. Thank you for asking. Almost immediately another message appeared. Car is still at your disposal. Driver will take you home when ready. The thoughtfulness of the gesture struck him. In the chaos and concern for Maya, he hadn't even considered how they would get home. The theater was miles from the hospital, and his car was still in the corporate parking garage. Thank you, that helps tremendously. As they exited the hospital, the sleek black car was waiting exactly as promised. The driver, professional and discreet, helped Maya into the back seat with careful attention to her injured arm. Wow, Maya whispered as she settled into the plush leather seat. Is this your boss's car? Yes, Leo replied, somewhat amused by her awe. Ms. Vance was kind enough to let us borrow it. It smells nice, Maya observed, sniffing appreciatively. Like flowers, but not too sweet. Leo smiled, recognizing the subtle perfume that always seemed to accompany Isabella. Yes, it does. As the car navigated through evening traffic, Maya's energy began to fade, the excitement and trauma of the day catching up with her. She leaned against Leo's side, her small body growing heavier as she drifted towards sleep. Daddy, she murmured drowsily, Ms. Vance must be really nice to let us use her fancy car. Yes, Leo agreed softly, stroking her hair. She is. The realization settled over him gradually. Isabella Vance, CEO and visionary, had without hesitation diverted her own transportation to help a temporary consultant and his injured child. It wasn't the kind of calculation that advanced corporate strategy or enhanced shareholder value. It was simply human kindness offered without expectation of return. As Maya's breathing deepened into sleep, Leo's phone buzzed again. Would it be helpful if I brought dinner by your apartment? No pressure, just an offer. I remember how challenging these moments can be. Leo stared at the message, surprised by both the offer and the personal insight it revealed. After a moment's consideration, he replied, that would be very kind. Maya will probably sleep soon after we get home, but I'd appreciate the company. Only after sending the message did he realize what it implied, a personal connection beyond their professional relationship. But as the car continued its smooth journey toward their apartment, Leo found he didn't regret the acceptance. The day had shifted his perspective in unexpected ways. The sabotage attempt, advanced technologies, seemed suddenly remote compared to the immediate reality of Maya's injured arm. Yet Isabella's response to both crises, the professional and the personal, revealed a depth of character he hadn't fully appreciated before. As the city lights blurred past the window, Leo felt something shifting in his carefully structured life. Not a disruption, so much as an expansion, a tentative opening to possibilities he had long ago set aside. The gentle knock on the apartment door came just as Leo finished making Maya comfortable on the living room sofa. She had fallen into a deep sleep during the ride home, the pain medication adding to her exhaustion. He had managed to change her into pajamas without fully waking her, a skill perfected during years of solo parenting. Leo glanced around the small apartment, suddenly aware of its modest furnishings through new eyes. The furniture was well maintained, but clearly secondhand, the decorations limited to Maya's artwork and a few framed photographs. It was clean and functional, but a stark contrast to the corporate luxury Isabella Vance inhabited. He opened the door to find Isabella standing there holding several paper bags emitting enticing aromas. She had changed from her corporate attire into more casual clothing. Still elegant, but less formal. The transformation made her seem somehow more approachable, more human. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said quietly, noticing his hesitation. "Not at all," Leo replied, stepping aside to let her enter. "Thank you for coming, and for the car. It made things much easier." Isabella smiled, a genuine expression that softened her features. "I'm glad I could help. How's Maya?" "Asleep on the sofa. The doctor says it's a clean break, should heal completely in about 6 weeks." He gestured toward the kitchen. "Please come in." Isabella followed him, taking in the small but meticulously organized space. Her gaze lingered on the refrigerator, covered with Maya's artwork, and school papers held in place by colorful magnets. "I brought options," she said, setting the bags on the counter. "I wasn't sure what you'd prefer. Italian from Marcello's and Thai from Lotus Garden." "Both excellent, Boyan," Leo said, genuinely impressed by the selection. Both restaurants were well regarded, but not ostentatious. Thoughtful choices that wouldn't make him uncomfortable. "The Thai sounds perfect, actually. Let me get some plates." As Leo moved around the small kitchen, Isabella noticed a framed photograph on the windowsill. Leo in his navy uniform standing beside a smiling woman with Maya much younger between them. "Your wife?" she asked gently. Leo paused, following her gaze to the photograph. "Yes, Sarah. That was taken about a year before she was diagnosed." Isabella studied the image. "She had a beautiful smile. Maya has it too." "Yes, she does." Leo's voice carried the complex emotion of grief transformed by time. Still present, but no longer raw, a familiar weight he had learned to carry. Sarah was a music teacher, piano and voice. She could light up a room just by walking into it. Isabella seemed to understand that further questions would be intrusive. Instead, she helped unpack the food, moving with unexpected ease in the modest kitchen. "The board meeting went long," she said, changing the subject. "The sabotage attempt has everyone on edge." Leo nodded, grateful for the shift in topic. "Any progress identifying who placed the device?" "Security is reviewing access logs and camera footage, but the device was placed in a blind spot." She frowned slightly. "Too convenient to be coincidental." "Someone who knows the security system well, then," Leo observed, setting plates on the small dining table. "Exactly." Isabella accepted the glass of water he offered. "The board is concerned naturally. Some members are suggesting we delay the launch. And you disagree?" "Vehemently." Her expression hardened slightly. "Nexus is ready. These disruptions are attempts to derail what we've built, and I won't let that happen." They sat at the table, the food between them, creating a bridge between their very different worlds. Leo served them both the domestic normalcy of the act, creating an unexpected intimacy. "You mentioned that Nexus is your vision," Leo said after they had begun eating. "What inspired it?" Isabella considered the question, her expression thoughtful. "My younger brother Thomas. He had severe dyslexia, brilliant mind trapped by an inability to process written language efficiently." She took a sip of water. "Traditional education failed him completely. By 12, he'd been labeled a problem student, disruptive, even unintelligent." "That must have been difficult for him," Leo observed. "And for you to witness." "It was infuriating," Isabella admitted, "watching someone with so much potential being systematically diminished by a system that couldn't accommodate different ways of learning." Her voice softened. "My parents hired specialists, tried every approach available, but the fundamental problem remained. His brain processed information differently, and the world wasn't designed for that difference." Leo listened, understanding dawning. "So Nexus isn't just about technological advancement. It's personal." "Very personal," she confirmed. The neural interface we're developing could eliminate those barriers entirely. Not by fixing people like Thomas, but by creating technology that adapts to how their minds naturally work. The passion in her voice was compelling, revealing a depth of purpose beyond corporate ambition. Leo found himself reassessing his assumptions about her motivations. "Where is Thomas now?" he asked. A shadow crossed Isabella's face. "He died 10 years ago, car accident. He was 22. "I'm sorry," Leo said simply, recognizing the familiar territory of loss. Isabella nodded, accepting the condolence. "He never got to see what we're building, but in many ways he's at the center of it." She met Leo's gaze directly. "That's why I can't let Nexus be corrupted or delayed. It's not just a product, it's a promise I made to his memory." The vulnerability in her admission shifted something between them. This wasn't CEO Isabella Vance speaking, but simply Isabella, a woman driven by personal loss and genuine purpose. "I understand," Leo said quietly. "When you've lost someone, finding meaning in that loss becomes essential. A way to make sense of something that never truly makes sense." Isabella studied him, recognition in her eyes. "Yes, exactly. You've walked that path too." "Still walking it," Leo acknowledged. "Every day with Maya is both a joy and a reminder of what Sarah's missing. So I try to give Maya the life Sarah would have wanted for her. Music education, stability." "You've done an admirable job," Isabella said. "It's evident in how Maya responded today. She was scared but resilient. That comes from having a secure foundation." Their conversation shifted to lighter topics as they continued eating. Memorable hospital experiences, the challenges of workplace politics, the surprising complexity of elementary school social hierarchies. The initial awkwardness had dissolved, replaced by an unexpected ease that surprised them both. A small sound from the living room caught their attention. "Daddy!" Maya's voice was drowsy, confused. Leo was immediately on his feet. "I'm here, sweet pea. How are you feeling?" Isabella followed him into the living room, hanging back slightly as Leo knelt beside the sofa. Maya blinked sleepily, her gaze moving from her father to the unfamiliar woman standing nearby. "My arm hurts," she mumbled, then focused more clearly on Isabella. "Are you Ms. Vance, the lady with the nice car?" Isabella smiled, approaching carefully. "I am, but you can call me Isabella. Your dad told me about your accident. That's quite a cast you have." Maya held up her purple encased arm with a mixture of pain and pride. "I picked purple. It's my favorite color." "Excellent choice," Isabella approved. "Purple has been associated with royalty for centuries. Very distinguished." This historical detail seemed to please Maya enormously. She studied Isabella with undisguised curiosity. "You're really pretty. Are you Daddy's friend from work?" Leo felt a flush of embarrassment at his daughter's directness. "Maya." "Yes, I am," Isabella answered smoothly, saving him from awkward explanations. "Your dad has been helping me with some very important computers at my company." "He's good at fixing things," Maya stated with absolute certainty. "Mom always said he could fix anything except her piano playing." Isabella laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Is that so?" "Uh-huh. He fixed Mrs. Abernathy's car when it wouldn't start, and Mr. Peterson's sink when it was making funny noises, and the big light thing at the theater when it fell down." "The main chandelier," Leo clarified, somewhat embarrassed by Maya's enthusiastic catalog of his repair work. "It came loose during renovation." "I'm not surprised," Isabella said. "Your dad has a special talent for seeing how things work and why they don't." Maya nodded sagely as though this confirmed a universal truth. Then her attention shifted abruptly in the way of children. "I'm hungry. Can I have some of that food? Smells really good." Leo checked his watch, calculating when she'd last taken pain medication. "Let's get you something to eat and then another dose of medicine." As he went to prepare a plate for Maya, Isabella sat carefully on the edge of the sofa. "Does your arm hurt very much?" she asked. "Sometimes," Maya admitted. "But the doctor said I was super brave, and now everyone at school will sign my cast. Josie had a cast last year, and everybody signed it, even Principal Rodriguez." "That is a significant benefit," Isabella agreed seriously. "Although I'm sorry about the pain part." Maya studied her with the direct curiosity of childhood. "Did you ever break anything?" "My collarbone when I was about your age. I fell from a horse." "You have horses." Maya's eyes widened. My family did, yes, though I wasn't a very good rider as the broken collarbone suggests. Leo returned with a small plate of food adapted for one-handed eating. As Maya began to eat, her earlier drowsiness giving way to hunger, Isabella rose. I should let you both rest, she said. It's been a long day. Leo walked her to the door, aware of her reluctance to see her leave. At the threshold, she turned to him. Thank you for allowing me into your home, she said quietly. It's been refreshing. Leo understood what she meant. The simple domesticity of the evening, takeout containers and kitchen tables and a child's interrupted sleep, was probably far removed from her usual experiences. Thank you for everything today, he replied. The car, the food, the company. It made a difficult situation much easier. Isabella hesitated, then spoke with careful precision. Leo, I want to be clear. My interest in your work, Advanced Technologies, is professional. Your insights are genuinely valuable to the Nexus project. But I also, she paused, seeming to search for the right words. I've enjoyed getting to know you beyond the professional context. The admission carried a vulnerability that contrasted with her usual corporate confidence. Leo found himself responding to that openness with his own. I've enjoyed it too, he said simply. More than I expected. Something shifted in her expression. Relief, perhaps, or quiet satisfaction. Good. I'll see you tomorrow at the office. I'll be there, he confirmed, though I may need to adjust my schedule for Maya's follow-up appointments. Of course, family comes first. She smiled again, a genuine expression that transformed her features. Good night, Leo. As he closed the door behind her, Leo was aware of an unfamiliar sensation. A lightness, a possibility, a door opening to something he had not allowed himself to consider for a very long time. Leo arrived at Advanced Technologies the next morning to find the atmosphere noticeably tenser than before. Security presence had increased with additional guards stationed at key access points. Dr. Chen met him at the development lab entrance, her expression grave. The sabotage situation has escalated, she informed him in a low voice. 2 more devices were found this morning, one in the server room and another near the executive offices. Leo frowned. Similar to the one from yesterday. Identical, and again placed in camera blind spots with precision. They entered the lab, where the development team was working with heightened focus, an undercurrent of nervous energy pervading the space. Where's Isabella? Leo asked, noticing her absence. Emergency board meeting, Dr. Chen replied. The discovery of additional devices has raised serious concerns about internal security. There's talk of postponing the launch. This news troubled Leo. After yesterday's conversation with Isabella, he understood how personally important the Nexus timeline was to her. What can I do to help? He asked. Dr. Chen led him to a workstation where components of the Nexus interface were laid out for inspection. We need to verify that none of the prototype units have been tampered with. Given your ability to spot the power supply modification, your perspective would be valuable. For the next several hours, Leo worked methodically with the engineering team, examining each component of the Nexus system for signs of tampering. His approach was thorough and practical, focused on physical irregularities that might escape the notice of those looking primarily for software or electronic modifications. By noon, they had confirmed that the prototype units themselves were uncompromised, a significant relief to the development team. Leo was preparing to leave for his afternoon shift at the theater when his phone buzzed with a message from Isabella. Need your input at board meeting. 10 minutes in conference room A if possible. Critical situation developing. The request was unexpected, but the urgency was clear. Leo quickly informed Dr. Chen, who nodded understanding. The board respects your assessment of the sabotage attempts, she explained. Your practical perspective carries weight precisely because you're not entangled in company politics. Leo made his way to the executive floor, conscious of the curious glances from staff as he passed. Conference room A was the largest on the floor, its glass walls currently frosted for privacy. The security guard at the door checked his credentials before allowing him entry. Inside, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Around the massive table sat the Advanced Technologies Board of Directors, men and women whose combined influence extended across multiple industries. Isabella stood at the head of the table, her posture radiating controlled determination. Marcus Reed sat to her right, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes calculating. Mr. Mercer, thank you for joining us. Isabella greeted him formally. The board has questions about the security incidents you've helped identify. Leo nodded, taking the empty seat she indicated. I'm happy to share what I know. An older man with silver hair and piercing eyes, the board chairman Leo guessed, addressed him directly. Mr. Mercer, you discovered the first sabotage device. In your professional assessment, what are we dealing with here? Corporate espionage, terrorism, disgruntled employee? Leo considered his response carefully. Based on the nature and placement of the devices, this appears to be an inside job with specific knowledge of both the Nexus technology and advanced security systems. The intent seems to be disruption rather than data theft or catastrophic damage. Meaning a woman in her 60s prompted, meaning someone wants to delay or derail the Nexus launch, not destroy the technology or steal it, Leo clarified. The devices were designed to cause problems that would be difficult to diagnose but ultimately fixable. If the goal were destruction, different methods would have been employed. Reed leaned forward, which supports my recommendation that we postpone the launch until we have identified and neutralized this threat. The integrity of our security has been compromised. Isabella countered immediately. Postponing plays directly into the saboteurs' hands. That's precisely what they want. To delay Nexus, to undermine confidence in our timeline. The tension between them was palpable, an ongoing battle being fought through careful corporate language. The chairman turned back to Leo. Mr. Mercer, you have military experience with security threats. What would you recommend? The direct question placed Leo in a difficult position. His answer would inevitably support either Isabella's or Reed's position, drawing him further into corporate politics he had hoped to avoid. In military operations, he began carefully, when facing an adversary attempting to disrupt mission timelines, we typically employed two simultaneous strategies: enhanced security protocols to prevent further disruption and accelerated mission execution to deny the adversary their objective. He paused, aware of Reed's tightening expression. In this context, that would suggest maintaining the launch timeline while implementing targeted security measures focused on the most vulnerable aspects of the project. Isabella's face revealed nothing, but Leo sensed her approval. Reed, however, was visibly displeased. With all due respect, Reed interjected, Mr. Mercer is a technical consultant, not a corporate security expert. The stakes here involve billions in shareholder value, advanced technology's market position. Precisely why his outside perspective is valuable, Isabella countered smoothly. He's not constrained by corporate groupthink or invested in particular outcomes. The chairman considered this exchange thoughtfully. Mr. Mercer, one final question. Based on your analysis of the sabotage devices, how sophisticated is our adversary? Are we facing a lone actor or something more organized? Leo didn't hesitate. The devices themselves require significant technical knowledge, but could be created by a single individual with the right expertise. The placement, however, suggests intimate knowledge of building systems, security protocols, and the Nexus project itself. That combination of knowledge would be unusual in a single person. The implications of his assessment hung in the air. Someone high in the Vance hierarchy with access to multiple systems and departments was the most likely culprit, or someone was being helped by multiple insiders. The chairman nodded, then turned to Isabella. We'll take a brief recess to consider our position. Mr. Mercer, thank you for your input. You are free to go. As Leo rose to leave, Isabella caught his eye briefly. Her expression communicated both gratitude and caution. The board deliberations were far from over. In the hallway outside, Leo checked his watch. He'd need to leave soon to reach the theater for his afternoon shift. As he waited for the elevator, he became aware of footsteps approaching. Marcus Reed appeared beside him, his tall frame radiating controlled anger. That was quite a performance, Mercer, Reed said quietly. For a theater maintenance man, you certainly know how to work a boardroom. Leo met his gaze evenly. I simply answered the questions truthfully based on my assessment of the evidence. Did you buy Reed's voice remained low, but an edge had crept in. Or did you provide the answers that would please your patron? Isabella has taken quite an interest in your career advancement. The insinuation was clear, and Leo felt a flash of anger. My assessment was professional and objective, Mr. Reed. Make of it what you will. Reed stepped closer, invading Leo's personal space slightly. Let me be direct since you value clarity. You're a temporary player in a game you don't understand. Vance Technologies has been my life for 15 years. I've guided its strategy, expanded its market position, protected its interests. And yet Isabella Vance is CEO, Leo observed quietly. Reed's expression hardened. For now. But boards can change their minds, especially when promised technologies fail to materialize on schedule or when leadership demonstrates poor judgment in their associations. The threat was thinly veiled. Before Leo could respond, the elevator arrived with a soft chime. He stepped inside, turning to face Reed. I fix things, Mr. Reed. That's all I do. But in my experience, the people most concerned about sabotage are often those most familiar with how it works. The doors closed on Reed's darkening expression, leaving Leo with the unsettling awareness that he had just made a powerful enemy. The corporate politics he'd hoped to avoid had found him nonetheless, drawing him deeper into a conflict where the stakes extended far beyond his temporary consulting role. As the elevator descended, Leo's phone buzzed with a message from Powell at the theater, asking if he could come in earlier due to an issue with the sound system. Leo replied affirmatively, grateful for the return to familiar territory and practical problems with straightforward solutions. Yet as he left the Vance building, he knew that his involvement with the Nexus project and with Isabella herself had crossed a threshold. He was no longer simply a technical consultant, but had become, willingly or not, a participant in a high-stakes corporate power struggle. The theater's familiar backstage area welcomed Leo, with its comforting sense of dust and wood and ancient velvet. Powell met him near the main soundboard, explaining the intermittent feedback issues they'd been experiencing during rehearsals for an upcoming production. For the next several hours, Leo lost himself in the methodical process of troubleshooting the sound system, testing connections, checking ground loops, examining the aging amplifiers for signs of failure. The work was predictable, the problems identifiable, the solutions clear and measurable. It was a welcome respite from the murky complexities of corporate sabotage and boardroom politics. By early evening, he had identified and repaired the issue, a deteriorating solder joint in one of the main speaker crossovers. As he packed his tools, Powell approached with evident relief. You've saved us again, Leo. The director was threatening to move rehearsals to another venue if we couldn't fix the sound issues. Leo smiled slightly. Just a bad connection. Happens to the best of us. Speaking of connections, Powell continued, his tone becoming curious. Word is you have been consulting Advanced Technologies. Quite a step up from theater maintenance. News travel fast in their small community. Temporary project, Leo explained simply. Should wrap up in another week or so. Powell nodded, but his expression remained speculative. Well, you have always been overqualified for this position. We all knew that. I'm just glad you're getting recognized elsewhere. He paused. Though selfishly, I hope you're not planning to leave us permanently. No one else understands this old building's quirks like you do. The comment struck Leo unexpectedly. He hadn't considered how his work at Vance might be perceived by his colleagues at the theater, or what it might mean for his future. For 3 years, this job had been his anchor. Predictable hours, manageable responsibilities, a safe harbor after the storm of Sarah's illness and death. I'm not going anywhere, he assured Powell, though. As he said it, he realized he wasn't entirely certain that was true anymore. As Leo left through the theater's stage door, the evening air carried the first hint of autumn crispness. He checked his watch, still an hour before he needed to pick up Maya from her friend's house, where she'd gone after school. With time to spare, he decided to walk, using the opportunity to clear his head. The events of the past 2 weeks had disrupted the careful routine he'd constructed for himself and Maya. The consulting work at Vance had reawakened professional capabilities he'd deliberately set aside. His interactions with Isabella had stirred emotions he'd kept carefully dormant. Even Maya had noticed the change in him. You're smiling more, Daddy, she'd observed that morning as he helped her navigate breakfast one-handed. Leo's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The screen showed Isabella's name. Leo, she began without preamble when he answered, I need your help. Can you come back to the office? Her voice carried an urgency that immediately put him on alert. What's happened? Security found evidence that someone accessed the core Nexus architecture files last night, installing what appears to be a backdoor protocol. The board is using this as justification to seize control of the project. They've given me 24 hours to identify the security breach, or they'll postpone the launch indefinitely and appoint Marcus as interim project lead. The implications were clear. If Reed gained control of Nexus Isabella's vision for the technology, the educational and medical applications she prioritized would likely be subordinated to more immediate commercial interests. "I'm on my way," Leo said, already changing direction. "But I need to arrange care for Maya first. Of course, use my car service. It's faster than public transportation. I'll send it to your location." Within 20 minutes, Leo had arranged for Maya to stay overnight with her friend's family, a contingency plan they had used occasionally when theater emergencies required his attention. The sleek Vance Technologies car arrived precisely as promised, whisking him back to the corporate headquarters. The building was largely empty at this hour, most employees having departed for the day. Security was heightened, with guards checking his credentials carefully before allowing him to the development floors. Isabella met him in the elevator, her usual composed exterior showing signs of strain. "Thank you for coming," she said as they walked rapidly toward the main development lab. "I wouldn't have called if it wasn't critical." "Tell me exactly what happened," Leo requested, falling into the methodical approach that had served him well in crisis situations. "At 2:17 this morning, someone using executive credentials accessed the Nexus core architecture files from a terminal in the building. They installed what our security team is calling a ghost protocol, essentially a backdoor that would allow remote access to any Nexus interface after deployment. They entered the lab where Dr. Chen and two security specialists were working intently at a central workstation. Multiple screens displayed code sequences and access logs. "The breach wasn't detected by our standard security protocols," Dr. Chen explained as Leo approached. "It was only found during a manual review we initiated after the physical sabotage attempts." Leo studied the information on the screens. "Whose credentials were used?" One of the security specialists answered, "That's the problem. The system shows the access was authorized using Ms. Vance's personal authentication codes." Isabella's expression tightened. "Which I did not use. I was at home asleep." "Authentication codes can be stolen," Leo observed. "What about the physical access to the building that would require Isabella's security badge or biometric verification?" "The logs show entry using her badge," the specialist confirmed. "But there's no corresponding visual confirmation from security cameras. Another blind spot issue: the cameras covering that entrance were offline for scheduled maintenance." The pattern was becoming clear. A carefully orchestrated attempt to not only sabotage Nexus, but to implicate Isabella herself in the security breach. The sophistication suggested planning and intimate knowledge of Vance security systems. "Who authorized the camera maintenance schedule?" Leo asked. The specialists exchanged glances. "Standard procedure would require sign-off from the head of security operations, but we haven't been able to locate the specific authorization for last night's maintenance." Isabella's phone chimed with an incoming message. She checked it, her expression hardening. "The board has called an emergency session for 9 tomorrow morning. I'm expected to present findings on the security breach and take responsibility for failures in leadership," as they put it. Leo understood the subtext. The board was positioning to remove Isabella from the Nexus project using the security breaches as justification. Reed's strategy was becoming clear. Create security incidents, implicate Isabella, then step in as the solution to a crisis he himself had engineered. "We need proof," Leo said simply. "Not theories or suspicions, but definitive evidence that the security breaches were orchestrated to target you specifically." Isabella nodded, her determination evident despite her fatigue. "Where do we start?" "With the ghost protocol itself," Leo replied, turning to Dr. Chen. "Can you isolate the exact code that was inserted?" Chen nodded, fingers moving rapidly over the keyboard. "Already done. It's sophisticated but distinctive. A proprietary approach using nested encryption that conceals its true function from casual inspection." Leo studied the code displayed on the screen. Something about its structure tickled his memory, a familiar pattern he'd encountered before. "This reminds me of something from my Navy days. A specific approach to communications interception that was developed for intelligence operations." He turned to Isabella. "Does Vance Technologies have any contracts with military or intelligence agencies?" "Several," she confirmed. "Primarily through our secure communications division." "Who heads that division?" Isabella's expression shifted as she made the connection. Marcus was director of military contracts before his promotion to VP of operations. He built that division from the ground up. Can you access the proprietary code libraries from the Secure Communications projects? Leo asked. We need to compare the Ghost protocol with those libraries. For the next several hours, they worked methodically comparing code structures and access patterns. The security specialists expanded their investigation, reconstructing the timeline of all security incidents over the past month. Dr. Chen conducted a comprehensive audit of the Nexus architecture, identifying and isolating the malicious code. As midnight approached, a pattern emerged from their collective efforts, a clear trail of deliberate sabotage and misdirection, all designed to undermine the Nexus project in Isabella's leadership. The Ghost protocol matched coding patterns from classified projects developed under Reed's direction years earlier. The physical sabotage devices contained components that could be traced to the Secure Communications Division's research lab. It's circumstantial but compelling, Hamrai, Isabella observed as they reviewed their findings. The question is whether it's enough to convince the board. Leo considered the evidence they had gathered. There's one piece missing, direct connection between Reed and the actual implementation of these breaches. He's too smart to have done the physical work himself. Dr. Chen looked up from her terminal. What about Peterson in security operations? He's worked closely with Reed for years, and he would have authority to modify camera maintenance schedules. Check his access logs and communication records. Isabella directed the security specialist. If he's involved, there must be evidence. While they pursued this lead, Leo noticed Isabella's growing exhaustion. She had been working continuously since early morning, the strain evident in the subtle tension around her eyes. You need rest, he said quietly, stepping close enough that only she could hear. Tomorrow's board meeting requires you at full capacity. She sighed, rubbing her temples. I know, but there's too much at stake to stop now. Not suggesting stopping, Leo clarified. Just a short break. Clear your mind, then return with fresh perspective. Isabella studied him for a moment, then nodded. You're right, 15 minutes. There's a small lounge down the hall. The executive lounge was designed for brief respites during long workdays. Comfortable seating, subdued lighting, a kitchenette with high-end coffee and snacks. Isabella sank into one of the plush chairs, closing her eyes briefly. Leo prepared 2 cups of coffee, bringing one to her. Cream, no sugar, correct. She accepted the cup with surprise. How did you know? Observation, he replied, simply taking the seat opposite her. You take your coffee the same way at every meeting. Isabella smiled slightly. Whereas you alternate between black coffee in the morning and tea in the afternoon, usually Earl Grey. Their eyes met in shared recognition of how closely they had observed each other's habits over these past weeks. Why did you really ask me to consult on Nexus? Leo asked the question, emerging before he had fully formed the thought. There are more qualified experts available to someone in your position. Isabella considered the question, cradling her coffee cup. The night at the concert, when you fixed the streaming system, you approached the problem differently from anyone I've worked with. No preconceptions, no theoretical frameworks, just pure practical insight. She paused, her gaze direct. But it was more than that. I watched you during the performance before the technical issues arose. You did. This surprised him. You were completely present in the music. Not networking, not checking emails, not mentally reviewing your next day's meetings. Just experiencing the moment fully. Her expression softened with the memory. That's rare in my world. People are always positioning, calculating, advancing their interests. Genuine presence is refreshing. The admission carried a vulnerability that contrasted with her public persona. Leo recognized in it a loneliness that echoed his own. Different in circumstance, but similar in essence. And you, she asked, why did you accept my offer? It was outside your comfort zone, disrupted your carefully structured routine. Leo considered his answer carefully. Initially for practical reasons, the compensation, the professional challenge, but then he paused, organizing his thoughts. For 3 years, I've defined myself primarily as Maya's father, a role I cherish, but it had become my only identity. The work at Vance has reminded me that I'm still the person who solved complex communications problems in the Navy, who has skills and insights that extend beyond fixing theater equipment. Isabella nodded, understanding evident in her expression. We both lost parts of ourselves. You to grief and responsibility, me to corporate expectations and ambition. Perhaps we recognized that shared experience in each other. The moment between them deepened a connection forming beyond professional collaboration or casual friendship. Leo found himself drawn to the complexity of this woman, her brilliant strategic mind, her passionate commitment to her vision for Nexus, the glimpses of vulnerability beneath her confident exterior. Before either could speak further, Leo's phone buzzed with an incoming message from the security specialist. They found something in Peterson's communications. We should get back. The evidence was damning. Encrypted messages between Peterson and Reed discussing security protocol modifications, scheduling maintenance for specific cameras, and arranging access to restricted areas. Most critically, they had recovered deleted files from Peterson's work terminal that included the blueprint for the sabotage devices and the code structure for the Ghost protocol. This confirms Reed's involvement, Isabella said, reviewing the evidence. Peterson was the instrument, but Reed was the architect. Leo nodded. The question now is how to present this to the board effectively. Reed will have prepared his own narrative, positioning himself as the solution to the security crisis. Isabella's expression hardened with resolve. Then we need to be better prepared. I want complete documentation of every piece of evidence, a clear timeline of events, and a remediation plan that addresses both the technical vulnerabilities and the personnel issues. They worked through the night assembling a comprehensive case that not only exposed Reed's sabotage, but also demonstrated Isabella's leadership in identifying and resolving the threat. By dawn, they had compiled irrefutable evidence of Reed's culpability and developed a security enhancement plan that would protect Nexus through launch and beyond. As they prepared for the board meeting, Isabella turned to Leo. I want you there. Your perspective on the technical aspects will carry weight with the board. Leo hesitated. This is corporate politics at the highest level. I'm not sure my presence helps your position. It does, she insisted. You identified the initial sabotage, you recognized the pattern in the code, and you have no personal stake in the outcome beyond professional integrity. Your testimony will be seen as objective. After a moment's consideration, Leo nodded. All right, but I need to call Maya first, make sure she's okay with the overnight arrangement. Isabella's expression softened. Of course, family first always. The call with Maya was brief but reassuring. She was enjoying the sleepover with her friend and managing her cast with admirable independence. The conversation centered him, reminding him of what truly mattered beyond corporate intrigues and technological breakthroughs. By 8:30, the executive floor was coming alive with activity. Board members began arriving, their expressions revealing varying degrees of concern and curiosity about the emergency session. Reed appeared last, his confident demeanor suggesting he expected the meeting to go his way. His momentary surprise at seeing Leo standing with Isabella was quickly masked, but not before Leo caught the flash of calculation in his eyes. Isabella, Reed greeted her with professional courtesy that did not reach his eyes. I trust you're prepared to address the board's concerns about the security breaches. More than prepared, Marcus, she replied, her tone controlled but carrying an undercurrent of determination. I believe today's meeting will be illuminating for everyone involved. The board chairman called the session to order promptly at 9 tomorrow. Isabella was invited to present her findings first, a strategic advantage she leveraged effectively. With clear, compelling evidence, she outlined the pattern of deliberate sabotage attempts, the falsification of security logs, and the implication of her own credentials in the breach. Then came the turning point. Through rigorous investigation, we have identified the source of these security breaches, she announced, her voice steady. I'll let Mr. Mercer explain the technical aspects of our findings. Leo stepped forward, presenting the evidence methodically. The distinctive code patterns in the Ghost protocol matching Reed's previous military contract work, the communication records between Reed and Peterson, the blueprint for the sabotage devices found on Peterson's terminal. The board members' expressions transformed as the presentation continued, from skepticism to surprise to growing anger. Reed's face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw as the evidence mounted against him. When Leo finished, Reed immediately went on the offensive. This is a desperate attempt to deflect attention from Isabella's security failures. Peterson may have acted inappropriately, but trying to implicate me is absurd. I've devoted 15 years to this company. The chairman raised a hand to silence him. Mr. Reed, the evidence presented is substantial and specific. Do you deny authoring the code structure identified in the Ghost Protocol? That code was developed for legitimate military applications years ago, Reed countered. If Peterson repurposed it, that doesn't implicate me. And the communications discussing camera maintenance schedules and security access? Another board member pressed. Reed's composure began to crack. Taken out of context. As VP of Operations, I regularly discuss security protocols with relevant personnel. Isabella stepped forward again. The context is quite clear, particularly when viewed alongside the timeline of sabotage attempts and the technical signatures of the devices. Marcus sought to undermine the Nexus project, create a leadership crisis, and position himself to take control at a critical moment. She turned to face Reed directly. The question is, why sabotage a technology that represents the future of our company? Reed's expression hardened. If you want to know why, Isabella, look at what you've done with my research. I developed neural interface technology for strategic applications, military intelligence, corporate advantage. You've diluted it into an educational tool, a medical device, a consumer product. His voice rose with long, suppressed frustration. Nexus should be transforming national security, creating unprecedented market advantage for select corporate partners. Instead, you're giving it to children with learning disabilities and patients with neurological conditions. You're squandering its potential. The naked ambition and callousness in his statement hung in the air. Board members exchanged troubled glances, the ethical implications of Reed's vision clearly disturbing even to hardened corporate leaders. Isabella's response was measured but powerful. Nexus was never meant to be a weapon or a tool for exclusivity. Its greatest potential lies precisely in democratizing neural enhancement, making it available to those who need it most regardless of their strategic or commercial value. She looked around the room, meeting each board member's gaze. That's the vision you endorsed when you appointed me CEO. Not power concentrated in the hands of a few, but technology that expands human potential across society. That's not just ethically sound, it's commercially visionary. The market for enhanced learning alone is projected at $300 billion by 2030. The chairman cleared his throat, his decision evident in his posture. I believe we've heard enough. Mr. Reed, please surrender your access credentials and leave the building. Security will escort you. The board will determine appropriate legal actions regarding the sabotage attempts. Reed's face flushed with anger. You're making a catastrophic mistake. Isabella's idealism will cost this company billions in unrealized potential. That will be all, Mr. Reed, the chairman stated firmly. As security personnel appeared to escort Reed from the room, he paused beside Leo. Enjoy your moment, Mercer, he said quietly. But remember, you're still just the maintenance man who got lucky. Leo met his gaze steadily. I fix things, Mr. Reed, always have. The difference is I build up rather than tear down. After Reed's departure, the board voted unanimously to proceed with the Nexus launch as scheduled and to initiate a comprehensive security review of all systems potentially compromised by Reed's actions. Isabella's leadership was affirmed, her vision for Nexus endorsed without reservation. As the meeting concluded, the chairman approached Isabella and Leo. Remarkable work, both of you. Mr. Mercer, your contributions to resolving this crisis have been invaluable. I hope we might convince you to consider a more permanent role at Advanced Technologies. The offer caught Leo by surprise. Thank you, sir. That's unexpected. Think about it, the chairman suggested. We need more people who see systems holistically, who understand the practical realities of implementation. Too many brilliant minds here, not enough practical wisdom. After the board members departed, Isabella turned to Leo, fatigue and triumph mingling in her expression. We did it. Nexus will launch as planned with its original vision intact. You did it, Leo corrected gently. This was always your vision, your fight. I just helped identify some practical problems along the way. Isabella shook her head. Don't diminish your role, Leo. Without your insights, Reed might have succeeded. She paused, studying him. The chairman was right. Vance could use someone with your perspective on a permanent basis. Leo considered the implicit offer. I need to think about that. It would mean significant changes for Maya and me. Of course, Isabella agreed immediately. There's no rush to decide. She hesitated, then continued more personally. Whatever you choose professionally, I hope we might continue to explore the connection that's developed between us. The directness of her statement was characteristic. No games, no ambiguity, just honest expression of interest and respect for his autonomy. I'd like that, replied simply. Very much. Isabella smiled, the genuine expression transforming her features from corporate leader to simply a woman connecting with a man who interested her. Good. Now go home, get some rest, and check on Maya. We both need sleep before we make any more life-altering decisions. As Leo left the Vance building, morning sunlight illuminated the city around him. He felt lighter somehow, as though the night's crisis had burned away something that had been weighing him down. Perhaps the last vestiges of the narrow boundaries he had drawn around his life after Sarah's death. Whatever came next, whether he accepted a permanent role at Vance or returned exclusively to his work at the theater, he knew that his world had expanded in ways he hadn't anticipated when he first sat beside Isabella Vance at a charity concert. He had gone there that night for Maya's sake, to bring music into her life as Sarah would have wanted. What he hadn't expected was that the evening would also bring new possibilities into his own life. Professional challenges that reawakened dormant capabilities, and a personal connection that offered the promise of something he had believed lost to him forever. As he walked toward the apartment where Maya waited, Leo Mercer felt ready to build something new from the broken pieces of his past, not just fixing what was damaged, but creating something stronger and more beautiful than before. 1 year later, the grand foyer of the Madison Theater sparkled with renewed elegance. The historic chandelier that Leo had once repaired now shone with brilliant clarity, its crystal pendants casting prismatic reflections across the gathered crowd. The renovation had been extensive but respectful of the building's heritage, modern amenities seamlessly integrated with classic architecture. Leo stood near the refreshment table watching Maya navigate the crowd with practiced ease. Her purple cast was long gone, replaced by confident gestures as she explained the theater's history to interested patrons. At 9 years old, she had become an unofficial ambassador for the Madison's new community arts program, a joint initiative between the theater and the Vance Foundation. She's a natural, Isabella observed, appearing at his side and slipping her hand into his. Sarah would be proud. Leo smiled, the mention of his late wife, no longer bringing sharp pain, just a gentle acknowledgement of her continued presence in their lives. She would, especially of the music program. The reception celebrated the launch of the Madison Theater Arts Initiative, which provided subsidized arts education to children throughout the city. The program had been Isabella's idea, inspired by conversations about Sarah's work as a music teacher and Maya's inherited talent. Across the room, Dr. Chen was deep in conversation with the theater's artistic director, discussing how Nexus technology could enhance accessibility for patrons with hearing impairments. The neural interface had launched successfully. Its initial applications focused precisely where Isabella had always intended: education, medicine, and accessibility. How does it feel, Isabella asked, gesturing around the renovated theater, seeing your two worlds come together like this? Leo considered the question thoughtfully. Right, he said simply, like pieces finding where they belong. His dual role had evolved naturally in the months following the Nexus crisis. 3 days a week, he served as Director of Practical Innovation at Advanced Technologies, bringing his unique perspective to projects across the company. The remaining time, he oversaw facilities and technical operations at the Madison, which had become a showcase venue for community arts programming. The arrangement allowed him to maintain Maya's stable routine while expanding his professional horizons. More importantly, it preserved the hands-on work he valued, fixing, building, improving tangible systems, while allowing him to influence larger technological visions. Dad, Isabella, Maya called, weaving through the crowd toward them. Mrs. Abernathy says she wants to volunteer as a piano teacher for the after-school program. Isn't that perfect? Absolutely perfect. Isabella agreed, her expression warming as Maya reached them. The relationship between them had developed, gradually built on shared love of music and mutual respect. Isabella had never attempted to replace Sarah in Maya's life, instead creating her own distinct connection with the child. The first classes start next month, Maya continued excitedly. Do you think some kids might use the Nexus Learning Program too? That's the plan, Leo confirmed. 10 units specifically adapted for music education. Dr. Chen's team has been working with professional musicians to refine the neural patterns. The integration of Nexus technology into the arts program represented everything Isabella had envisioned, not exclusive technology for the privileged few, but tools that expanded access and opportunity across society. The initial results had been remarkable, with children facing learning challenges, making unprecedented progress, when traditional educational approaches were enhanced with tailored neural interfaces. As Maya hurried off to continue her unofficial hosting duties, Isabella's expression grew thoughtful. I received another offer for the military applications today. Significant funding, classified development track. Leo nodded unsurprised. Despite Reed's disgrace and subsequent legal troubles, interest in weaponizing aspects of the Nexus technology remained persistent from certain quarters. The pressure on Isabella had been constant, sometimes subtle, sometimes overt. And your answer was the same, I assume. Of course, she confirmed. Nexus stays on its original path, though the board chairman reminded me that we've left billions in potential revenue on the table. Leo smiled slightly. Some things aren't measured in revenue. Exactly what I told him. Isabella's gaze followed Maya across the room. I showed him the data from the Children's Hospital pilot program instead. 87% improvement in neural pathway development for patients with traumatic brain injuries. Remarkable functional recovery in cases previously considered permanent. Numbers that matter, Leo agreed. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Powell, the theater manager, now sporting the title of Community Engagement Director. Everything's set for the demonstration, he informed them. The students are ready whenever you are. Isabella checked her watch. Perfect timing. Shall we? They made their way to the main theater where guests were finding their seats. The stage had been transformed into a showcase for the various arts programs that would soon fill the building. Music stations, visual arts spaces, dance areas, all designed to be accessible to children of diverse abilities and backgrounds. Leo took his place at the side of the stage where he could monitor the technical aspects of the presentation. From this vantage point, he could see both the performers and the audience, two worlds he now moved between with increasing comfort. The house lights dimmed, and Isabella stepped onto the stage. Her presence commanded attention immediately, but her opening words revealed none of the corporate polish that had once defined her public persona. A year ago, she began, I attended a performance in this theater and noticed a man sitting alone, completely absorbed in the music. That chance encounter led to a partnership that has transformed not just this historic building, but my understanding of what technology should accomplish in our world. She gestured toward the children assembled at the side of the stage. Students from the pilot program, many from backgrounds with limited access to arts education, some with learning differences or physical challenges that had previously excluded them from traditional programs. The Madison Theater Arts Initiative represents our commitment to expanding access to artistic expression for all children in our community. With support from the Vance Foundation and the integration of adaptive technologies, we're removing barriers that have kept too many young people from discovering their creative potential. As the children moved to their positions on stage, Leo noticed a small figure slip away from the group and hurry toward him. Maya appeared at his side, her expression a mixture of excitement and nervousness. They asked me to play with them, she whispered. Mrs. Abernathy says I should show the new students what they can learn. Leo felt a surge of pride and bittersweetness. Your mother would love that sweet pea. Maya squeezed his hand. I know. I'm playing her favorite Chopin piece. She hesitated, then added, Is it okay if Isabella comes to sit with you? I asked her to, but she said I should check with you first. Of course it's okay, Leo assured her, touched by both Maya's thoughtfulness and Isabella's respect for his parental role. As Maya returned to the stage, Isabella joined Leo in the wings. She's remarkable, she said quietly. Such poise. She gets that from her mother, Leo replied. Her could calm a theater full of nervous children before a recital with just her presence. Isabella slipped her hand into his, again a gesture that had become familiar and comforting over the past year. She gets plenty from you too. That focused determination, the ability to see patterns others miss, the quiet confidence in her abilities. The demonstration began with a carefully choreographed presentation of the various programs, music, dance, visual arts, theater, each showcasing how traditional arts education was being enhanced by thoughtful integration of technology. Several children demonstrated how the adaptive nexus interfaces help them overcome specific challenges, translating their creative intentions into artistic expression, despite physical or neurological barriers. When Maya's turn came, she sat at the grand piano center stage, her posture echoing Sarah's in the photograph on their apartment windowsill. The piece began softly, her small fingers moving with surprising confidence across the keys. As the music filled the theater, Leo felt something shift within him. Not the sharp pain of loss that had once accompanied reminders of Sarah, but a warm certainty that her legacy continued transformed, but undiminished. Isabella's hand tightened slightly in his, her quiet presence, an acknowledgement of both the moment's emotional weight and its beauty. As the presentation concluded to enthusiastic applause, Leo reflected on the journey of the past year. The sabotage crisis advance had been just the beginning of a transformation that extended far beyond professional roles or corporate strategies. What had started as a chance encounter between two people from vastly different worlds had evolved into something neither could have anticipated. A partnership that honored their distinct strengths while creating something greater than either could have built alone. Later that evening, after Maya had been tucked into bed with stories of the day's success still spilling excitedly from her lips, Leo and Isabella stood on the small balcony of his apartment. The city lights spread before them, a constellation of human endeavor, both flawed and beautiful. "I received the final data on the educational implementation today," Isabella said, leaning against the railing. 83% of the children who were 2 or more grade levels behind have reached grade-level proficiency within 6 months. The neural pathways we're helping them develop will serve them for life. "That's Thomas's legacy," Leo observed quietly. Isabella nodded, her expression softening at the mention of her brother. "Yes, and Sarah's lives on through the music program." She turned to face Leo directly. "We're building something meaningful from our losses. Not replacing what we lost, but creating something new that honors them." Building, not just fixing, Leo agreed, the distinction meaningful to him. For years after Sarah's death, he had focused on maintaining, repairing, preserving what remained of their life together. Now with Isabella, he was creating again. New possibilities, new connections, new purpose. "The chairman asked again about my 5-year vision for Vance." Isabella continued, a hint of amusement in her voice. "I told him I was still consulting with my director of practical innovation." Leo smiled. "And what did this director suggest?" "That perhaps the most revolutionary approach would be focusing on human needs first, then developing technology to serve them, rather than creating technology and then finding markets for it." "Sounds suspiciously like common sense," Leo observed, "precisely why it's revolutionary in the tech world." Isabella laughed softly, then grew more serious. "Your perspective has changed how I lead, Leo, how I define success. Numbers still matter, Sharyam, market share, profit margins, user adoption rates, but different numbers have become more important. Lives improved, barriers removed, potential unleashed." Leo understood. His practical nature had always focused on tangible results. Systems that worked, problems solved, things fixed. Isabella had helped him see how those same principles could scale beyond individual repairs to systemic improvements, beyond maintaining what existed to creating what could be. As they stood together in the quiet evening, the distance between the janitor who had sat alone at a concert and the CEO who had noticed him from the front row had dissolved. What remained were two people who had found in each other not just romantic connection, but intellectual partnership, shared purpose, and the courage to build something new from the broken pieces of their pasts. "Maya asked me something interesting today," Leo said after a comfortable silence. "She wanted to know if being happy now meant forgetting about being sad before." Isabella turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "What did you tell her?" "That happiness and sadness aren't opposites. They're parts of the same whole. That remembering Sarah with love doesn't diminish our new joy, it deepens it." Isabella leaned against him gently. Wise words from the practical man. "I have my moments," Leo replied with a small smile. "Usually when I'm not overthinking." As the city continued its nighttime rhythm below them, Leo Mercer recognized that the most complex system he'd ever helped repair wasn't the Nexus technology or the theater's aging infrastructure, but the human connections that had been damaged by loss and isolation. The healing hadn't erased the breaks. He would always miss Sarah. Isabella would always grieve for Thomas. but something strong and beautiful had been built around those fractures. In the quiet moment on the balcony with Isabella beside him and Maya sleeping peacefully inside Leo, understood that some breaks couldn't be fixed, only incorporated into something new. The visible seams of repair weren't flaws to be hidden, but evidence of resilience, of the human capacity to transform loss into connection, pain into purpose and chance, encounters into meaningful change.